Greetings, ASA members. Remember that old adage, don't ask the question if you don't really want the answer? Well, we're going to explore some questions today. The first one is, does the constitutional spending limit doom Prop 208 and also spell trouble for Prop 301? 4 decades ago, a constitutional limit on education spending was established based upon student population and the cost of living related to 1979 and 1980. Ever since, we've been living with that limit. Now, the Invest in Education Act, which voters approved as Prop 208, created a 3.5% income tax surcharge on Arizonans who earn more than $250,000 a year in order to inject an estimated $827 million a year into public schools. To get around the spending cap, the ballot measure classified the new money as a grant and declared that the funding was not considered local revenues and therefore not subject to the constitutional limit. As you know, the Supreme Court disagreed. Chief Justice Robert Brutinel wrote in the unanimous opinion that a statute cannot circumvent or modify constitutional requirements. The court threw the case back to the trial court to determine if the revenue generated would exceed the limit. Senator Paul Boyer, chair of the Senate Education Committee, said the legislative budget analysts are predicting the state will exceed the spending limit this fiscal year. I quote, "Even if Prop 208 gets tossed out by the court, which it sounds like it's going to be, we're going to exceed the limit this fiscal year anyway." Here's the problem. Proposition 301 was reauthorized by the legislature in 2018, shortly before its 20-year limit was about to expire. It brings $600 million to the schools. When the legislature reauthorized it, they did not think about exempting that tax from the constitutional limit. Though the state Supreme Court never mentioned Prop 301 in its ruling, the justices made it clear that without an amendment to the state constitution, the legislature has no power to exempt that sales tax revenue from the spending limit. The legislators can issue a 1-year exemption with a 2/3 vote. Will that happen? Or they can refer a constitutional amendment to the voters. Would they be willing to do that? Either way, a problem is looming with Prop 301, and that's a $600 million problem. A link in this message leads to an article exploring this issue in more detail, if you really want to ask that question. Now let's move on to another question. Is the ban on mask mandates legal? Now this is a question the legislators and Governor Doug Ducey did not want to be asked, but the court will consider it on September 13th. That's the date set by Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Catherine Cooper, and it's designed to give her not just a chance to rule, but also time for whoever loses that ruling to appeal it to the Supreme Court. That's important because absent a court order, the new law takes effect on September 29th. But much more than the question of masks in public schools is at stake. The lawsuit, filed by a coalition of school board members, educators, child welfare activists, and others, contends that the same legal flaws in enacting the prohibition against masks also invalidates a host of other issues. These range from prohibiting schools from requiring vaccination against COVID-19 to banning the teaching of what has been labeled as critical race theory. And that's why Senate President Karen Fann and House Speaker Rusty Bowers have hired attorney Corey Langhofer to add their voice to the arguments supporting the legality of these provisions. You see, the budget bill is like a Christmas tree, which various legislators hang their ornaments on. The ornaments are the price of their vote for the budget, yet most have no direct relation to the budget. This violates the same subject clause in the Constitution. That clause says, Any bill shall embrace but one subject and matters properly connected therewith. So if the coalition prevails, business as usual is changed in the legislature. The bigger question, of course, is what happens if the coalition prevails and then the case goes on and is appealed to an Arizona Supreme Court packed with Governor Doug Ducey appointees. Now there's a question many of us are not sure we want to hear the answer to. Another question we don't always like to think about, but we must, involves educational staff misconduct, because it happens. Last year, the legislature transferred the investigations unit away from the Arizona Department of Education over to the State Board of Education. This has ramifications for all of you as practitioners. You now report incidents of misconduct to the State Board of Education, not to the Arizona Department of Education. And remember, this reporting now covers classified as well as certified employees. There's a link in this message to the new reporting page on the State Board of Education website. So pay attention to that. Now, one final question. This final question concerns one I haven't wanted to answer, but I have heard for a few years. The question is, when are you going to retire? I guess it was spurred by my youthful appearance and dark hair. I started to teach a few decades ago, and this academic year actually marks my 50th in education. That's a nice round number, so it will be my concluding year of service. 2021-22 will be my 6th and final year of enjoying the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Arizona School Administrators. The Executive Board will soon be commencing a search for my replacement, and next year you will not be seeing me in these videos. I will have vanished.